So today we are going to see chapter 5, Kingdom, King and Yearly Republic. Election Day. Sankaran walks up to see his grandparents all ready to go and vote. They wanted to be the first to reach the polling booth. Why Sankaran want to know where they so excited. Somewhat impatiently, his grandfather explained, "We can choose our own rules today." How some men become rulers. Choosing leaders or rulers by voting is something that has become common during the last 50 years or so. How did men become rulers in the past? Around 3000 years ago, some men become recognized as Raja by performing big sacrifices. The Ashwamedha or horse sacrifice was one such ritual. A horse was let loose to wander freely, and it was guarded by the Raja's men. If the horse wandered into the kingdom of other Rajas and they stopped it, they had to fight. If they allowed the horse to pass, it means that they accepted that the Raja who wanted to perform the sacrifice was stronger than them. These Rajas were then invited to the sacrifice, which was performed by especially trained priests who were rewarded with gifts. The Raja who organized the sacrifice was recognized as being very powerful, and all those who those come brought gift for him. The Raja was central figure in these rituals. He often had a special seat, a throne or tiger skin. His charioterie, who was his companion in the battlefield and witnessed his exploits, chanted tales of his glory. His relatives, especially his wives and sons, had to perform a variety of minor rituals. The other Rajas were simply spec- spectators who had to sit and watch the performance of the sacrifice. Priests performed the rituals, including the sprinkling of the sacred water on the king. The ordinary people, the Vis or Vaisyas, also brought gift. However, some people, such as those who were regarded as Shudraj by the priests, were excluded from many rituals. Make a list of all those who would be present at sacrifice, which are the categories that are described in terms of their occupation. Varnas. There were four social categories, namely Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. Brahmin were expected to study as Vedas, perform sacrifices, and receive gifts. Kas- Kahat- Kshatriyas was expected to fight battles and protect people. Kshatriyas, Kshatriyas were expected to fight battles and protect people. Vaisyas were Vaishyas were expected to farm and headers and traders. The Sudra was expected to serve the other three groups. Painted grey ware, plates and bowls are the most common vessels made out of the painted grey ware. These are extremely fine to touch with a nice smooth surface. Perhaps these were used on special occasions for important people and the serve special food. Janapadas. Janpadas. The Rajas who performed these big sacrifices were now recognized as a big Raja of the Janpadas. Rather than Raja, the word Janpada literally means the land where Raja set its foot and settled down. Some important Janpadas are shown on the map for page number 45. Janpada, Kula, Panchai, Avanti, Magadh, Ang. The Rajas who performed these big sacrifices. Archaeologists have excavated a number of settlements in these Janpadas, such as Purana Kila and Kila in Delhi, Hastinapur near Meerut, and Atranchi Khera near Etha. The last two are in Uttar Pradesh. These found They found that people lived in herds and kept cattle as well as other animals. They also grew variety of crops: rice, wheat, barley, pulses, sugarcane, sesame, and mustard. Is there a crop in this list that was not mentioned in chapter 3? I think barley, wheat, rice, pulses. Linseed, maybe linseed. Halsey. They made earthen pot. Some of these were grey in color, other were red. On a special type of pottery found at these sites is known as painted grey ware. It is obvious for the name these grey pots had painted designs, usually simple lines and geometrical patterns. Mahajanpad, Mahajanpadas. About 2500 years ago, some Janpadas became more important than others and were known as Mahajanpadas. Some of these are shown on map 4. Most Mahajanpadas had capital city. Many of these were fortified. This means that Huge wall of wood, bricks or stones were built around them. Forts were probably built because people were afraid of attacks from other kings and needed protection. It is also likely that some rulers wanted to show how rich and powerful they were by building really large, tall, and impressive walls around their cities. Also, in this way, the land and people living inside the fortified area could be controlled more easily by the king. Building such huge walls requires a great deal of planning. Thousands, thousands, if not lakhs of bricks or stones had to be prepared. This is turn meant enormous labor, provided possibly by thousands of men, women, and children, and resources had to be found for all of these. The fortification wall at Kushambi. This is a picture of a remain of wall made of brick found near present-day Allahabad. A part of was probably built about 25 years ago. The new Rajas now began maintaining armies. Soldiers were paid regular salaries and maintained by the king through the year. Some payments were probably made using punch marked coins. See the illustration in page 25. We will see. You will read more about these coins in chapter 8. List two ways in which the Rajas of the Mahajanpad were different from those maintained in the Rig Veda. Rajas has a small territory, but the Maharajas, Mahajanpads have a small territory, but Janpads have a small territory, but Mahajanpad a bigger one. They usually uh, made a wall of bricks, woods, for protecting from other Janpad, Mahajanpad, and also showing its power. That's why those huge buildings and forts were used to build. Mm. So it is also an animalistic nature. Show up bigger himself. When any animal try to show himself bigger, when a snake want to show himself bigger, when he was afraid, when he has any desire may be several types. It may be a form of fear, it may be a form of lust, huh? uh, so several types. It may be a form of jealousy. So the all the human beings affected by jealousy, all the animals mainly fear and lusts, the simple desires, and that's why they always try to see himself bigger. People try to see himself bigger by building large buildings. Animals always try to show himself bigger by expanding his body, and like you can see peacocks and any other animals too, like lion how show himself bigger by his hairs around his face. Texas. As the rulers of the Mahajanpadas were building huge forts, maintaining big armies. They needed more resources and they needed officials to collect these. So instead of depending on occasional gifts brought by people, as in the case of Raja of the Janpadas, they started collecting regular taxes, taxes on crops, taxes on craft portions, headers paid, taxes on animals and animal product, taxes on good through trade. Hun- Hunters and gatherers had to provide forest product to the Rajas. What do you think would have been provided by hunters and gatherers? Hmm? Hunters and gatherers, fruits, expensive woods, and forest product, maybe special type of seeds and medicines may also, and animals too, when they have to require, Raja have to require. Change in agriculture. There were two major changes in agriculture around this time. One was the growing use of iron ploughters. This means that heavy clay soil should be turned over better than with a wooden ploughed share, so that more grain could be produced. Second, people began transplanting paddy. Transplanting paddy. This meant that instead of scattering seeds on the ground from which plants would sprout, spellings were grown and then planted in the fields. The, this led to increase the production as many more plants survived. Can you think why kings would encourage these changes? A closer look, Magad. Find Magad on map. Magad became the most important Mahajanpad in about 2200 years. Many rivers such as Ganga and Son flowed through Magad. This was important for transport, water supplies, making the land fertile. Part of Magad were forested. Elephants which lived in the forest could be captured and trained for the army. Forest also provided wood for building houses, carts, and chariots. Beside, these were iron ore mines in the region that could be trapped, make strong tools and weapons. Magad had two very powerful rules, Bhimbisara and Ajatsatru, who used all possible means to conquer other Janpad. Mahapadmananda was another important ruler. He extended his control up to the northwest part of the subcontinent. Rajgir, present day Rajgir. Rajagriha, Rajgir. Bihar was the capital of Magad for several years. Later, the capital was shifted to Patliputra, present day Patna. More than 23 years ago, a ruler named Alexander, who lived in Macedonia in Europe, wanted to become world's conqueror. Of course, he hadn't conquered the world but did conquer parts of Egypt and West Asia and come to the Indian subcontinent. Reaching up to the banks banks of the Beas. When he wanted to march further eastwards, his soldiers refused. They were scared as they had heard that the rulers of India has vast armies of foot soldiers, carrots, and elephants. In what ways were these armies different from those described in the Rig Veda? I am not studied about those army. Those are described in Rig Veda. A closer look, Vaji. While Magadha became a powerful kingdom, Vaji, with its capital at Vaisali, Bihar, was under a different form of government known as Gana or Shangha. In a Ghana or a Shanga, there were not one but many rulers, and each one were known as Raja. These Rajas performed rituals together. They also meet in assemblies and decided what had to be done and how through discussion and debate. For example, if they were attacked by any enemy, they met to discuss what should be done to meet the threat. However, women, dasas, and kamkaras could not participate in these assemblies. Kamkars. This is an account of the Wazis from the Digha Nikya, a famous Buddhist book which contains some of the speeches of Buddha. These were written down about 2300 years ago. Ajatasattu and Visa. Wazis. Ajatasattu wanted to attack the Wazis. He sent his minister named Vashakara to Buddha to get his advice on the matter. The Buddha asked whether the Vazis met frequently in full assemblies. When he heard that they did, he replied that the Vazis would continue to prosper along as they held full and frequent public assemblies. They met and acted together. They followed assembly rules. They respected, supported, and listened to elders. So now we are going to see activities. Before we have some paras more. Waji women were not held by force or captured. Chityas, local shrines, were maintained in both town and village. Wise saints who followed different belief were respected and allowed to enter and leave the country freely. In what ways was the Vaji Shanga different from the other Mahajanpadas? Try and list at least three differences. Firstly, there are several small Janpadas, but Mahajanpad is a single one. It was like a country of confirm a country made with different state. Vajis Sangh, and they always decide anything by making a committee and debating on that. But in the Mahajanpad, there was only one king and everything was directed by him. So now we are going to see keywords. Raja, Ashwamedha, Varna, Janpada, Mahajanpada, fortification, army, tax, transplantation, Ganna and Shanga. Hmm. So that's what the keyword of today. And imagine you are peeping through a crack in the walls of the piping through a crack in the walls of the assembly of Vaishali, where a meeting is progress to discuss ways to deal with an attack by King of Magad. Describe what you might hear. So Vaishali's all several kings were discussing. So you will command on ground army, you will command the horse army, you will command all elephants army, and you will bombarding the arrows and golas from air. And you will uh, uh, exceed your army through the Gandak Nadi, and you will enter into the Ganga, and then we will fight a huge battle. And we will defeat the Magad Samraj, Magad Mahajanpad. This type of conversation may uh, would be happened. State whether true or false. Raja who let the Ashwamedha horse pass through their lands were invited to the sacrifice. Raja who let the Ashwamedha horse pass through their lands were invited to sacrifice. The Creator sprinkled sacred water on the king. No, priests. Archaeologists have found places in the settlement of the Janpada, port to store grain were made out of the painted grayware. Many cities in Mahajanpadas were fortified. Find in the chart given below with the term hunter, gatherer, farmer, traders, craftsperson, headers, those who paid taxes, the Rajas of the Mahajanpadas, all were paid taxes. Hunters in the form of hunting materials, farmers in the form of grains and crops, traders in the form of money or whatever good they make deal with that, they will pay to the king. And craft persons also, they could pay in the form of money and currency, or otherwise can also pay in the form of votes that they made it. Headers, I said headers, they what will collect or they will buried and header in their hand. Who were the groups who could not participate in the assemblies of the Ganas? Das, Women's, and Kramchari. Let us do. Whether there any Janpadas in your state? If yes, name them. If not, name the Janpadas that would have been closest to your state and mention whether they were to the east, west, and north or south. No, I am in Mahajanpada too. This is Magad Mahajanpada, and about which we studied about The Patliputra was capital of that, so I am listed in that same Patliputra. Find out whether the group mentioned in answer 3 have voting rights at present. Some important dates. New kinds of rajas about 3000 years ago, Mahajan Padas about 2500 years ago, Alexander invention composition of the Digas Nikya about 2300 years ago, end of the Ganas or Shangas about 50 1500 years ago. So that's all for today, and tomorrow we will going to see the new questions and ideas. Yeah, that can be my favorite chapter, new questions and idea. So that's all I have for today. Thank you very much.